Hi, welcome to our farm. So behind me, this is our main office. This is where I spend most of my days doing book work. In the off season, we have our oldest barn behind me. This is a bank barn. It is mostly symbolic and pretty. We don't store equipment in it because our equipment is too large. This is my house where I live. I have a very long commute to the office. And then behind me, we have our machine shed. This is where we work on equipment. It's heated, so we can work all winter long. And then behind that, we have our grain bins where we store all of our soybeans and about half of our corn crop. So where we're standing right now, this farm has been in our family for 6 generations. We call this field Dad's, which can lead to a lot of confusion because it's not my dad's, because there is a farm where my dad lives. Dad's is in reference to my grandfather's field because my grandfather lived here for many years. Way back 8 generations ago, a man moved to Bucyrus, Ohio and decided to settle here, start up a farm, and we actually got the first field where my parents lived through. It was a land grant, so it was about 50 acres that kind of started the farm, and then every generation has grown a little bit more. Today we are pretty much an all grain operation with corn and soybeans being our main crops. In high school, I knew that I wanted to be a farmer. Now my parents really pushed me to get a higher education, get away from the farm for a few years. So I went to The Ohio State University and I got an ag business degree, and then I came back to the farm in 2017. I worked for my dad as an employee for a few years, and then 2019 we formed Kent Family Farms LLC and we became business partners. And then in December of 2021, my dad decided it was time for him to retire. So I am in my 2nd season as owner of the farm. So my dad is in an official capacity retired, but farmers typically don't understand retirement. He still shows up to work every single day.
Okay, so you want George too, because I need to call him too.
And most of our arguments revolve around me telling him that he can't do things because he needs to take a step back.
So is she the boss of you, or are you the boss of her?
She's getting to be more the boss of me.
But he offers me great advice. He's really good at being a mentor and then also helping me, making sure I have all my ducks in a row and I'm not forgetting to do things here or there.
We have a really good time. I'm very proud of her. Yeah, it's awesome.
Growing up, I wasn't on the farm every single day. My mom put a high value on education and I was involved in all of the sports, all of the activities. But once I got all my homework done and stuff, I could go ride with my dad in a tractor during harvest season. He would pick us up from gymnastics practice in his grain truck, and while he was in harvest, he was still trying to help out around the house. And I can still remember the late nights of him coming home all dirty and gross, and then telling us about his day on the farm. Also, as a kid, I was in 4-H and FFA, so I took dairy beef cows to the fair. So I got to learn the processes and all the work involved in raising cattle on the farm. My first job on the farm was mowing the yard with the 420 lawnmower, and then once I could prove to my dad that I could drive in a straight line, he bumped me up to working ground around junior high and high school age. This is the house I grew up in, the farm I grew up at. This is the yard that really started my farming career, because once I learned how to mow the yard, I gotta learn how to do tillage in the field. I came back to the farm because I knew this is what I always wanted to do, and I knew there was opportunity for me here. What I love about farming is that I get to work with my dad every single day. Every day is different. There's no point in the season where you get into a rut, because once you get used to doing one job, it's time to transition into a different job. And I also really love doing the physical labor and being able to see a seed that you planted in May. You get to harvest that in the November, and then it could be sold in the next July. It's really, you can watch your income grow in the field, and in the other hand, you can watch your income dwindle away after a bad weather event, and so you just really don't know what to expect.
This is our moisture tester.
It is pretty atypical to own a farming operation at my age, and I'm really thankful for that opportunity. Yeah, so an acre is 30, wait, oh, I'm gonna get in trouble for this one. 35, no, 36, 4, 35, 6, 40. Ah! My FFA advisor would be so disappointed with me. That was a number that we had to have like drilled into our head. Is it 45, 360? I don't know. It's a 465 and some other numbers in there, but it's about the size of a football field. Currently, right now, we farm about 1,700 acres. So around here, we would be what would be considered an average size farm. And then we split those acres into corn and soybeans, and then we'll plant half to one, half to the other, and then we'll switch every year so that we're not planting the same crop in the same field year after year. That kind of helps with diseases and pressure from insects if you switch up the crop that's in the field. So the crops that we grow on our farm are GMOs, so this means genetically modified organism. So basically GMO corn and soybeans can be tolerant to different diseases and then also different chemicals we use. There have been a few people around us that have gone the non-GMO or organic, but simply it doesn't work out. When you're doing an ROI, it just doesn't really work around here. We also don't have a great outlet for it, but I believe that GMOs are safe and effective option. I eat GMOs every single day, and it's really just a technology that we've been able to harness. GMOs provide a more affordable option for consumers. We can produce more bushels per acre with GMO crops around here. So our corn goes to an end user, that end user being Poet Biorefining, and so that corn gets used to make ethanol, which is a fuel option for gas vehicles, and then it can also be used to make high protein animal feed. It can also be used to make hand sanitizer and dry ice, I recently learned. So that's where our corn goes, and then our soybeans we sell to an elevator that then sells it to someone else. So I'm not exactly sure where our soybeans end up because we don't sell to an end user. We sell to a middleman who then redistributes it. But that can potentially go into feeding livestock, would be the most common use for it. So for corn, we like to plant at the earliest being the end of April into May, and then we are harvesting usually by the end of October. We like to have corn off by Thanksgiving and tillage wrapped up by Christmas, but that mostly depends on what the weather is. Last year we had a fantastic year and we were done by November 3rd with everything, but then we've had some years where we harvest in February, which is much less enjoyable. And then soybeans, we pretty much plant at the same times. You can plant soybeans a little bit earlier. So depending on the weather, mid to late April is when we will start. And we will try to harvest our soybeans first because they are a little bit more finicky when it comes to the environment. And so we like to try to get those off and out of the fields. So my days during planting and harvest can very easily be 15-hour days for days in a row. So for our harvest this season, we got all of our soybeans off in 13 days, but a lot of those days started at 5 a.m. and ended at midnight. So we have jam-packed, really busy days when the weather is on our side, and then like this week we had rain and we were out of the fields for 4 days with nothing to do. So I have one full-time employee, JD. I'd prefer to hold off. Personally. He's full-time during spring and fall. He owns his own business, so in the off seasons he will shift into working on his own business. And then I have 3 part-time employees that work during harvest season. Now they're all retired, which kind of works for me well because I only need them 3 or 4 weeks out of the year, and it's hard to get someone for 3 or 4 weeks out of the year that has a full-time job. So I do have a kind of older crew. Everyone is 50 years and older, but that's kind of just how it works out. We need this ground to be working for us for years and years to come. So there are a few different practices that we use on our operation, one being no-till. So this ground right here, we will simply not do anything with it. If we do no-till, we will ideally plant our soybeans right here in the middle of the rows. And then we have discs that run on the at the front of all of our planters that will move this trash out of the way and into the seed bed. And then there's also a minimum till where you would run a piece of tillage equipment about 1 inch into the ground, and it would just break up these corn stalks. Just depending on what the weather's like, if we cause any ruts in the field, we will do a minimum till on a farm. No-till and minimum till is more sustainable because you are not doing a pass at the end of the year. So you're not putting wear and tear on your equipment, you're not burning fuel in the field, and also personally, I'm not paying for that extra labor. So the ground will just lay here. And then also it helps with erosion. So if you work a field up, you have a loose soil particles. If you get a heavy rain, that soil will wash and erode away over time. And then we also plant cover crops. And so this is a crop that would be planted after we take the field off, and it will overwinter and it will grow roots into the soil, and it'll kind of help with erosion. So there are a few different options for cover crops. So one of the main things that we've used is rye. And then we've also done blends of turnips, rapeseed, and clover. And so basically you'll do these different mixes, kind of get a nice little green cover for winter. Now some of that will die off, but it'll green up in the spring, and then we will plant our next crop into that. So a cover crop means a crop that you won't harvest. You're not trying to make money off of that crop. Cover crops are sustainable because they help put nutrients into the soil in theory. They also help with erosion because the more roots that you have in a field, the more soil particles it can hold on to, the less erosion there is. Our CRP ground, this is ground that you will take out of production. So we have this on a few different areas, on a few different farms. We have about 18 acres of it total. This is probably our prettiest patch, just because it was newly established this spring. This right here is CRP. So last year this was planted to soybeans, and then we took those acres out of production. We seeded them with a few different mixes of different cereals, and then we established a pretty good cover right here, and then I've mowed it once this year. These are very inconvenient fields to plant, so by the time it's all said and done, we'd rather not plant it. And I do farm in tennis shoes. It drives some people nuts. And so this allows insects and different bird populations to have a habitat that will not be disturbed, building up a nice little ecosystem that you won't be using in production. Then we also have a few acres that we have in pasture for cattle. So this ground is not tillable. It is also around a creek. So if we did work that ground, we would have a lot of erosion into there. So we're trying to find the best fit for that ground use. And so we have cattle on that field, which also helps add to the biodiversity of that ground. So now we're at the cattle pasture. So we have 12 dairy cows on pasture this year. So one of the things that's nice about having cattle graze is that you don't have to mow the pasture. And so they kind of keep it nice and mowed back for us naturally. Hello. Hi. The cows are very, very nice and tame. So that's always good. Hello. We have gotten a lot more efficient with our technology. Growing up, we did not have auto steer. That is a function that I absolutely love. This allows us to be much more efficient in driving straight, making less passes over the field because you can maximize the area used. So right now I can see, exactly how much fuel I'm using. Lots of different settings here. Now, in theory, I should have a globe on here and I should have auto steer, but our GPS decided not to participate. So I actually have a new globe in the mail coming that runs about $5,000, and that will help just drive down the row. So in theory, I wouldn't have to do any of this steering when we're unloading on the go. I just need to push a few buttons. And this is also, it adds like a lot less mental wear on the person doing the farming because they don't have to think about driving straight the whole time. They can focus on other aspects of how the planter or the combine is running. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and then also I make, that's when I get my more silly videos for social media, when I am left alone for too long with too many things to come up with. And our equipment is just so much larger, so you can cover more acres in a day. You can drive faster, so you burn less fuel as well. The precision on the auto steer is awesome. We have this thing called section control. So basically, once you plant a field, you get the headland open up. Every time that you go in and out of the field, the planter knows automatically to turn on and off, so you're not underplanting, leaving any gaps, and you're not overplanting, because obviously you're not going to have any yield where it's not planted, and you're actually going to have less of a yield where it's overplanted, because you're going to have more plants fighting for all the nutrients and moisture in the soil. I don't personally apply any of our pesticides. I have a private applicator's license, which means I took a very tricky test where you have to learn about all the chemicals and how they're used and why they're used. So I do have that license if I want to go buy pesticides, but currently I have a co-op do all of my spraying for me, so I don't have that cost of doing all the application. But yes, they apply pesticides, and this protects the crops from insect damage because they like to eat the corn and soybeans. So the amount of pesticides we use is very, very minimum. We're talking like 5 to 10 gallons of water being spread out per acre, with even less pesticide in that mix. So if you see a sprayer going and you see a cloud, 90% of that is going to be water. We use a very small amount of pesticides because we don't want to waste our money. They're very expensive. So we use only the amount that we need to use. And we also take precautions when using them so that they're safe. With the new technology that is coming out, there's a new technology called See and Spray, and basically this will spray on weeds and pests if they see it in the field, and so you're only targeting specific spots in the field. You're not just laying down a cover of chemical. So technology plays a role in everything that we do on the farm here. It is ever evolving, and we do need to keep up with it to remain competitive in our industry. We use technology on almost everything from our grain bins to I have an app on my phone that looks at exactly how much fuel we're burning on the combine every hour. And so we could really look and analyze what we're spending money on. Yeah, so right here I could see that this piece of equipment is running right now. And it shows me exactly where my fields are at. And then it tells me that the combine's running 6 miles an hour. I have apps on my farm that show me the market. I look at the weather app many times a day. And then I have Operations Center for all of our tractors, so I can see where they're at. So I don't have to call anyone while they're in a tractor, and I can figure out what they're doing. So just to give you guys an idea of the investment it takes in farming, our combine is worth about $300,000, and then the head on it was worth about $115,000. So just that piece of equipment right there can run you $500,000 easily. So we have 2 planting tractors, one for corn, one for soybeans, and then we have 2 different planters for that. We have 1 tractor for our grain cart, for taking that corn away from the combine, and then we have 2 semis and some smaller pieces of equipment, and then you get into tillage tools as well. There are always going to be trade-offs and benefits of using the different practices, but we need to be sustainable while also being profitable, because profitability allows us to continue farming every year and to hopefully pass it down to the next generation.